Welcome to another fascinating explainer on BPC-157 by ONPEPS, where we continue to make peptide research and data easier to access and understand for everyone. Today, we are taking a deep dive into the incredibly complex body-wide network that connects our digestive, vascular, nervous, and immune systems, and we're doing it all through the lens of one of the most talked about peptides in the world right now. Okay, let's quickly look at our roadmap for today. We're going to start with BPC-157's basic biological mechanics as a systemic master regulator, move straight through to real-world user data, tackle the great oral versus injectable debate, explore inflammation and mood, and wrap up with the current safety and legal landscape.
All right, Section 1, the systemic master regulator. We are shifting the paradigm way beyond the idea of just tendon repair.
So what actually is BPC-157? At its core, it's a stable gastric pentadecapeptide. Try saying that 3 times fast. But what does that actually mean for you? Well, think of it as a systemic master regulator. It's not just a biological band-aid patching up one localized tear. Instead, it holistically connects and stabilizes cellular communication across your entire digestive, vascular, nervous, and immune systems. Early on, scientists weren't just looking at isolated injuries. They were observing massive effects on cytoprotection, vascular recruitment, and overall disruptions involving the brain-gut axis.
And this body-wide connectivity brilliantly illustrates why the early literature was so obsessed with cytoprotection, literally protecting cells. In animal models, the results are wild. We consistently see it build fresh capillary networks, a process known as angiogenesis. We see it calm inflammatory alarms and really modulate the nitric oxide pathway to optimize blood flow. Basically, it completely boosts your natural cellular defenses against damage.
Moving right along to Section 2, real-world gut-brain results. Let's see how this builds into actual human experience by analyzing 53 user cases from the ONPEPS dataset. Now, what's really interesting here is that unlike healing a torn muscle, gut-related recovery is highly gradual and completely intertwined with lifestyle variables. Just look at this matrix. Users dealing with chronic gut dysfunction reported reduced bloating and much lower gastric irritation. Those coming off alcohol withdrawal or high stress saw improved digestive stability. And users with systemic inflammation described a noticeable, measurable drop in generalized stiffness and fatigue. It's a steady, stabilizing effect, you guys, not an overnight fix. Let's zoom in on user 8 for a second, because this is a fascinating, highly representative microstory of how gut healing directly cascades into neurological and cognitive improvements. After years of alcohol and heavy cannabis usage, user 8 was dealing with massive brain fog, irritability, and what he literally called a scorched digestive system. But after running a BPC-157 and TB500 protocol, commonly known as the Wolverine stock, he reported weeks of steady improvements. We're talking better sleep, much better food tolerance, and a total lifting of that severe brain fog.
Which brings us to Section 3, the oral versus injectable debate. Let's navigate this bioavailability divide.
Okay, let's really dive into this divide because it is one of the most hotly debated topics in the peptide community. On one hand, oral use leans entirely on the peptide's unique gastric stability. Because it survives so well in stomach acid, way better than most peptides, many take it orally, believing it directly targets the digestive tract. But on the other hand, users seeking to heal tendons or joints overwhelmingly prefer localized injections. The absolute core issue we have to understand here is that gastric stability does not automatically equal systemic bioavailability. In fact, we need to clear up a massive point of confusion: the half-life. The crucial point here is that injected BPC-157 clears out of the system incredibly fast. For a long time, this myth circulated based on a super old 1996 study claiming an oral half-life of around 66 hours. No way. Newer, robust animal studies show the half-life of injected BPC-157 is actually under 30 minutes. It enters, does its signaling, and rapidly breaks down into 6 smaller pieces through urine, bile, and stool. And this brilliantly illustrates a key problem. While we still lack proper human bioavailability data, the animal pharmacokinetics shows significant but highly varied systemic absorption. When injected intramuscularly, rats absorb about 14 to 19% of the dose. Dogs, however, absorb up to 51%. It spreads widely through the body, mostly heading to the kidneys, with very little actually making it to the brain. But the million-dollar question remains. Scientists still don't know exactly how well an oral dose crosses the human intestinal barrier. All right, Section 4, inflammation, pain, and mood. Let's talk about the stabilizer effect.
we need to be really objective here. BPC-157 is not some miraculous pain blocker. It calms inflammation. It doesn't just shut down pain signals directly like a corticosteroid or morphine would. In animal heat pain tests, it literally did nothing at all. What users actually experience in the real world is a lower baseline of stiffness, faster recovery between training sessions, and just way less inflammatory carryover. The pain relief is a byproduct of your biological environment calming down, not a numbing of your nervous system. Now, what's really interesting is how this impacts mood. Because BPC-157 acts as a stabilizer, it essentially forces a biological balance. If it brings you down to baseline, some users actually perceive that as feeling emotionally flat or joyless. In our dataset, while tons of people reported lower anxiety and improved calmness as their gut healed, others reported anhedonia, this feeling of emotional blunting or a lack of pleasure. It doesn't boost your brain like a stimulant. It balances neurotransmitters, which, can sometimes feel like a flattening of your mood.
Finally, Section 5. Safety, Testing, and Legality. Time for a much-needed reality check.
Let's dive into the elephant in the room regarding regulations. Is BPC-157 FDA approved? And can tested athletes legally use it in competition?
The short answer? Absolutely not. Because BPC-157 lacks fundamental, large-scale human testing, it remains a strictly unregulated experimental chemical. This highlights major concerns about third-party testing and purity. The FDA does not approve it, meaning you can't just walk into a normal pharmacy and get a standardized pharmaceutical-grade version. Plus, the World Anti-Doping Agency bans it at all times for tested athletes under Section S0, and there are absolutely no therapeutic use exemptions allowed. But despite that lack of human trials, the preclinical mechanisms we're seeing present a wildly promising frontier for future cellular and gastrointestinal therapies. Laboratory studies suggest BPC-157 can literally turn down inflammatory alarms by modulating cytokines. It acts like a cellular glue, rebuilding tight junction proteins to fight leaky gut. It even encourages your immune macrophages to switch from attack mode right into repair mode, actively triggering new blood vessel growth for deep tissue healing. So, what does this all mean? Well, with millions of people exploring its potential, the massive amount of real-world evidence surrounding BPC-157 is clearly paving the way for much-needed clinical trials. The observational data gives us incredible, undeniable insight, but the rigorous clinical science still desperately needs to catch up. Ultimately, we have to ask ourselves, as real-world use completely outpaces clinical regulations, how long will it take for modern medicine to fully unlock or restrict the true potential of the gut-brain axis? Don't forget to like and subscribe on YouTube and follow us on Spotify. Thank you for listening, and see you in the next video.